Why do we need missionaries at our colleges? Well, the college campus is the most critical mission field there is. You may say, well, every missionary staff that gets up there is going to say theirs is the most critical mission field. But listen to this. If you change the campus today, and you will change the world tomorrow. There isn't a mission field in existence today poised to shake the foundations of global spirituality like the university campus in the United States. Today's students are future world leaders. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, professors, journalists, counselors, business people, military officers, company executives, media professionals, and government leaders. And all of these people are on the university campus today. And we have kind of given up. There's a time when we just sort of gave up on the college university, even for our own kids. Kind of guarding them against maybe going off to the public university. But I'll tell you, if you research a public university and see what they have there for college ministries. Now, just because there's something on a list doesn't mean it's necessarily a vibrant campus ministry, but I would encourage you, if you're taking your kids or your grandkids are looking at college, every bit as much that you look at what majors they have there, you should be looking into the campus ministries. Because we've invested all this time, and we spent a lot of years up there investing in kids. We spend all this time investing in their Christian education and their spirituality from birth through 18. And then sending them off can be the best thing that happen is for them to have happen to them is for them to go to a public university. And I've seen this with Christian kids that come to Winona. You know, they're pretty scared. But we push them to be small group leaders. We push them to start sharing their faith. And sometimes the kids that are most nervous about it are the kids that grew up in church. It's not the kids that get newly saved at college. It's our church kids. But I have sat down with more Assembly of God kids that have come there, because I really go after those AG kids. When I hear there's a kid coming from one of our churches, man, I am all over them. And I'll tell you, I just make sure and get a hold of them, and they'll say, I don't know if I'm ready to teach a small group. And I look at them and I say, look at this student over here that got saved 4 months ago. They're signing up to teach a small group. You have more in you, in your little finger, biblically and educationally, Christian education, than they do in their whole body. You can do this. And I see them step out and do it. And then they start to lead a small group. And then they start to see that we talk a lot about having a ripple effect, that they can have a ripple effect. And so in our churches like this, we raise them up and then send them out. And we need them to, not just me, be a missionary on the campus, but our students to be missionaries on campus too. And honestly, I have seen students' faith grow much more in many ways at a public university if they have a good campus ministry to help them along than even sometimes at a Christian university. Nothing against that. I went to that. I mean, I love our Christian universities too, but it's not for everyone. And more we are going to see people that are going to be missionaries in the marketplace like most of you are, and I hope you've answered that call, because there's people at your job that are never going to hear about Jesus unless you're the one that tells them. They're never going to come. As great as Hermantown Community Church is, and as much as I love this church, there's just some people that'll never come here. There's people that'll never go to the Edge Church in Winona, Minnesota and listen to Chuck. They'll never go. At least that won't be their initial thing. But they'll listen to you, and they're watching you. So we're all called to be missionaries. But I know for now I'm called to be at Winona, and someone just asked, where's Winona? Well, if you look at Minnesota, we're way down in that southeast corner, and Winona State has about 9,000 students. Our strong majors are nursing, education, and it's also the only college that has a 4-year degree in the nation in composite engineering. A lot of engineering schools, but this is the only one in composites, which of course so many things are made with composites now. That is those students that graduate in composite engineering have businesses practically lining up to hire them. And so that's been a great major also down there. Chi Alpha is, again, as Pastor Thor said, our Assemblies of God ministry to the public university. And our goal is to reconcile students to Christ, to transform the university, the marketplace, and the world. We started down in Winona. Chuck started a church, and I started a campus ministry in the summer of 2008. And in 2016, we have a building that we own, Chi Alpha owns, and we met in there. We outgrew that and used a church for 3 years. And then a year and a half ago in the summer of 2016, we moved on to campus. And that was the best thing that we ever did. We got much more exposure, much more just rapport with the campus. There's a really short video that I'm going to show you because it'll just show you all aspects of the ministry. It's the overview video. So if you want to play that, I'll maybe narrate it a little bit. This is our welcome week where we just hit the campus and meet students. Like, that's our building. This is inside. There's a coffee bar downstairs. We have a gaga ball pit. And this was moving to campus. We had to buy a trailer. So every week we go in, set up, and this is in Thompson Auditorium, the largest auditorium on campus. We get to use 900 seats. We get to be in there every Thursday night. This is them checking in and have a winter retreat. We did it at Lake Geneva that year. Almost all of these students, about 90% of our students, get saved at Winona State. In the fall, we do a fall retreat. Reed's going to talk about that. We have our small group leaders baptize their small groupers that get saved. Girls' events on campus. We're in a lot of intramural teams on campus also. Churches come down for one-day missions trips and feed the students a meal during finals. That's a way you can get involved if you want to. A lot of leadership development also with our ministry. That was just the small group leaders right there. We made that video at the end of last year, so 247 last year, and I just counted up last night because we had 11 more students come to Christ this Thursday night, so I have to keep trying to catch up with our number. But we had, I think it was 168 so far since August. This fall we had a wonderful start and a great year. Evangelism is a huge focus for us. We're averaging about 175 students on Thursday night, but we really do a lot with Welcome Week. And we had a really amazing thing happen last April I want to tell you about just for a second. The campus got a hold of me. I've really tried to strategically get to know some of the key people on campus. I'm good friends with one of the vice presidents over student enrollment. We've gotten to be very good friends, and that's opened a lot of doors. But another guy I've gotten to be friends with is the guy who's over all the student activities, everything kind of social having to do with students and the whole student union area, the cafeteria. He's over all of that. His name's Joe Reed. And he called me last April and he said, Steph, could you come over to campus and meet with me? Because we're having a really hard time getting students during Welcome Week to show up for things. We have a really, really big party culture at Winona, and I know every public school does. But it's kind of to a different level down there. Probably partially because of the size of our town and all the housing that's right around the campus. It's just a constant roving house parties right around the campus there. And he said, we're just seeing so few kids come to our events. Would you come over and help us plan Welcome Week? And could Chi Alpha take a big role in that? So I couldn't believe it. I hung up and I told my staff and called my director, and he said, I've never heard of anything like that. Went over, gave them some ideas of maybe doing some more current things than what they were doing. And this fall, when freshmen got to campus, I still can hardly believe this, they were handed a schedule for Welcome Week. And 3 of the 5 nights, the big activity they could go to was put on by Chi Alpha. And so it was amazing the opportunity we have. So our first night of Chi Alpha, we had 270 kids walk into Chi Alpha. They didn't even know for sure what they were walking into. 43 kids got saved that one night. And it was, these kids are hungry. Praise the Lord. Yeah, that's for God. These kids are so hungry. And I said to the audience last night, I said, people, you can kind of think it's a lost cause. That's not true. These kids are starving for something real because they haven't been given it. Sports have been more important. Families aren't going to church, and they get off on their own, and the struggle they are having with mental health issues is off the charts. That is the worst problem that colleges are having now. It has surpassed alcohol and drugs, although alcohol and drugs then comes into play with that also. And so we have a terrible problem with mental health issues. And Mary Kay Caskey was here last night, and she'll tell you the same thing at all of our colleges, even private. And so they come in to Chi Alpha, and I am huge on being friendly and talking to everyone. I just fight against cliques and groups and that kind of stuff. Now, you're going to have your inner circle friends, and we need to have those. And sometimes students think no one should be close to anyone specifically. I said, well, you should always have just room for one more in your circle. And yeah, you're going to have those go-to people. But when people walk through the door, they need to be just blown away with friendliness. And that's what we hear students say, I've never walked into such a friendly group. No one knew me, and they just started talking to me. I was invited to 3 different small groups within the first 10 minutes of being there. And they set the stage that way, do worship and have some fun video announcements and go into a service, and it's just incredible to see what God does and what we've seen happen. And so that's kind of what's going on down there. Again, evangelism is just a huge focus. I've got a few pictures for you. That first night in Thompson in the auditorium, this is a picture of that. That auditorium was so filled up with students. It was so fun. And then again, not long after that, we had a baptism service, and these are all the students that got water baptized that got saved this fall. And with leadership then being a huge focus, we have a leadership slide. These are all of our small group. There is some staff mixed in here too. We only have students lead Bible studies on campus. I don't lead any. Reed doesn't lead them. My other staff that have graduated from Winona, they don't lead them. We have current students that lead other current students. And all of these students are now leading Bible studies on campus at Winona State. Isn't that amazing? I look at that picture, and it feels like, is God doing anything? 90% of those kids got saved after they got to Winona State. And now they are every single week on that campus leading other kids to Jesus and teaching them. It's just, I've been doing this 10 years, and I still look at those pictures like that, and it just blows me away what God is doing because we're being sent to the university campuses by churches like you. You maybe can't go, but you're doing what you can this week during your missions convention this month and giving your money so that we can go do our job so they can get saved and do their job. And it's just this continual ripple effect. There's another slide of now leadership has gotten to be such a thing that the new students start asking about it. So all of these students, some of them look kind of silly because it was the same night as our ugly sweater Christmas party. I had the meeting right before that. But these are the ones that are not in leadership yet, but came to find out how they can get into leadership for next fall. And so we just have this kind of machine that keeps flowing and developing leaders. There's all kinds of also different ministry teams. So there's small group leaders and there's ministry teams. So they can lead a small group, and then there's 16, I think, different areas, whether it's, I'll name a few: worship, missions, prayer, service, production, women's, men's, outreach, student center, all those kind of things that they can be a part of. And one of those is production. There's a slide that they're going to put up, and this is every single week we have to completely set up and tear down. We can't leave anything left up like you guys can here. So we walk into an empty stage, and Reed, which Reed, I want you to come because I'm going to have you speak right after this. He's over on the right there. This is the team that he has assembled. This is just one of the teams. It kind of, some of them are there every week, but then he switches them out. He built this entire sound system in our garage. It came that summer we were going to move to campus. It came in no less than 100 boxes. The FedEx guy was at our house constantly. He sat out there for weeks and soldered things. And because you could go and say, I want this type of system and get it put together by a professional, it would have cost 4 times what we paid for it. But because Reed had, over the years, starting pulling speakers across that room up there when he was a little boy helping his dad set up, that's really where it started. That heart that he loved production and sound and stuff like that. Because of that, he was able to build that whole system and literally save thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. And now he is great at assembling a team that loves being there. They're excited to be there. And so I just wanted, I know so many of you remember him as a little boy running around out in the foyer, so he's going to just share for a couple minutes what he's doing with Chi Alpha.
Good morning, Hermantown Community Church. It's great to be with you this morning. This is a unique experience for me to be here. I grew up going to church here until I was 9 years old and moved and sat on the front row and heard missionaries just like us get up and talk. And I always would get so excited about what they're doing and catch the vision and get excited and feel like God was doing something in me to do more with missions. And the offering bucket would go by and you'd throw $20 in and the service would move on and just completely dismiss any call that I had felt to missions and dismiss that sense that God was wanting to do more in my life. And at that time, for me, it was my perspective was that missions is something that happens overseas and happens in the darkest corners of the world that are inaccessible to me as a kid at that age. But what I've learned through Chi Alpha and what I've seen just being on staff, and I think the vision that our students and student leaders catch is that missions is something that happens everywhere, all around us every single day, and we're all called to missions. And the only question in that is whether you're called to full-time vocational ministry or ministry and missions in the marketplace and in your jobs and wherever you go to work every single day. I have a friend, his name's Grant, that goes to Winona State University. He came in as a freshman, and this is really interesting about Grant, a very rare thing. I can probably count on one hand the students that have done this, but Grant walked into our building the beginning of Welcome Week, hadn't been invited, hadn't been chased down or pursued, but walked in and met our staff team that was there. Brian was there, and just started talking to him and said, hey, what is Chi Alpha? I've seen some stuff about it. I'm interested. And got involved. That fall, Grant came with us to fall retreat, and God spoke and met Grant in a very real way that weekend. He asked him to be obedient in 2 things, and the first was to break up with his girlfriend at the time. It was not a relationship that was honoring God and that was going to fulfill the promise that God had for Grant in his life and in relationships and in marriage. And the second was to be obedient to the call of leadership that Grant had on his life. So Grant came home and pretty much immediately broke up with his girlfriend. And that had to happen, his obedience had to happen in that order so that he could clear out the distractions to then step into the second part of what God was asking, was him to be obedient to that call of leadership on his life. Grant, that spring, got involved in our leadership journey, became a small group leader, and is a junior now at Winona State. And the ripple effect of what Grant's obedience was and what God was speaking to him is incredible. The guys that he's been able to reach, and that now some of those guys are in leadership and are reaching even more people. And to me, I think it's so cool that the day that Grant came in, Welcome Week, that he saw our staff team and that Brian was there. And what he saw, what Grant saw, was a team that was there and was on the ground at Winona State University. But what Grant didn't see was the entire team of people standing behind our staff team, which is our support team. And that's all of you with the way that you support us at Chi Alpha and the other 27 missionaries that you support here. You are that team of people that Grant didn't see, but that truly were standing there behind us in prayer and in financial support. So I thank you on behalf of all of your missionaries here for what you're doing and for the support that you give us. And I encourage you to continue support and to set your pledge forms that you're working on at this time of the year, and to continue to be missional in your marketplace and your jobs as well. Thank you for having us.
Good job. Wow, Reed, you just took care of a lot of stuff that I just needed to say, so thank you so much for that. I just want to share this verse with you because we can all do this together, and I hope this verse will be an encouragement to you. Hebrews 12, 1 through 3. As you're thinking about making your pledges and what you can do, let's think of it in this way. Therefore, since we're surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, which is at your job, which is, there's witnesses here, there's witnesses in heaven watching us also. Since we're surrounded by that great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. What is it that hinders you? What is it that gets in the way? We all have something. Paul had something. He had a thorn in the flesh. And God can allow those things in our life to test us and see what we're going to do about it. Is that going to overcome us? And I'll be honest, I think that one of the biggest thorns we have in our country is money. Man, I just challenge you, because I'll be honest, even as a missionary, even as someone who's learned to give, my husband's been so instrumental in helping me learn to give. I grew up in kind of a tight-fisted family, very Christian, grew up in church, very good, but kind of would figure out all the ways why they kind of didn't need to give a lot, and I love them, but I do see that as part of maybe a little thing that wasn't so good in our family. And Chuck grew up in a pastor's home. His dad always had another job. They never had anything. And they're the most generous people. It's just amazing to watch. But what I've learned over the years is you have to develop a heart of generosity. Because I was able to develop it, even though sometimes I still kind of click back to that old, I don't know if we've got the money for this. And because Chuck was so raised in that environment, it's not quite as hard for him. But I have developed a heart for giving. But I learned it's never like all of a sudden one day it just is easy. And I tell the college students this because we take an offering every single week. And it's really not necessarily because I expect them to shoulder the financial responsibilities of this college ministry that really costs a lot of money with the building we have to run and everything we need to do. And now the numbers of students, it's a large amount of money I need to raise, more than I ever thought I'd ever have to. But I tell them, the reason we do an offering is because I want you to develop a heart of generosity. And in order to be generous, you have to practice. Because otherwise, we will sit there like I did for years and always have an excuse for why it doesn't work for me to give today. Well, I'm only in high school. I'm in college. Oh, we just got married. We have little kids. And there's, something came up in our life medically, or whatever. We got that right now with my knee. That's kind of a mess right now. But you know what? We're trying not to let that affect our giving. There's never just a moment, though, when all of a sudden it's like, oh, yeah, once I retire, once this, well, now I'm on a fixed income. Man, the enemy can just give us all these different reasons why it's never going to be easy. And I just encourage you to just, if maybe you're like me and you have to fight through that, today, practice. Practice generosity, because when you do it, the next time it's a little bit easier. And I can tell you this from experience. It was really hard at first when I was with Chuck and we started giving. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, we're barely making it. We're these poor youth pastors. He's like, yep, that's why we need to give. That's always what he says. Yep, sounds like we need to give then. And I'm just like, rah, And but he's right. And we've never, probably obviously, missed a meal, okay? It's okay, you can laugh. And we've never missed a bill. We have an unbelievable credit rating not because we have so much money, but just because God helped us get our bills paid, and we kept that in line. So I just encourage you, because I just look out and think, man, I wonder how many missionaries, or maybe you could increase missionaries, if everybody decided to practice in the area of missions. Maybe you don't give in that missions offering quite yet, but maybe this year, and Mary Caskey said, give them this idea. If you don't have a missions pledge, start with $10. If you have one, increase it by 5. If every single person in all of these services did that, Pastor Thor, I don't know how many missionaries you'd be able to support. I mean, because I'd not just have to have me, but like missionaries like Reed, he has to go raise all his own support, and he can't do it at churches. He's been having little individual meetings with people up here in Duluth just trying to raise his own support. But man, you guys could just be like, hey, we just want to bless you. We want to be the ones that come alongside you and make sure those kids are still coming to Jesus. And they're still learning how to be small group leaders. And they're learning how to disciple other students, because then when they move and get a job in places like Duluth, Minnesota, they're going to walk into their marketplace. And I see this. It's an incredible and so fun to talk to the alumni. I just talked to 2 of them last week. And they said, Steph, what you wanted to have happen is happening. You told us if we get used to leading a small group on campus, when we're in our job someday, we'll look around and say, okay, who's going to be in my small group? And they're leading small groups unofficially at their marketplace jobs. It's just so fun to watch. And so you're part of that happening. You're part of those students getting developed. And you can even be part of leading a Bible study where you are too. But thank you so much for all of you guys, what you guys do. I think I'm a minute over what I was supposed to be, so I need to get off the stage for you here. But thank you, and I encourage you, develop a heart of generosity. And today, do something. You'll be very, very, very fulfilled if you follow that call.
Thank you so much, Pastor Steph. I love this weekend. Missions is very dear to my heart. And man, it's amazing. And she, last night, Pastor Steph was talking about how the college students have just been giving and finding this generosity. And that's not unique to college students right now. It's amazing to see as students, younger people around the state of Minnesota have been doing this, and how it's challenging us as adults. I don't know if you realize, but the teenagers in our denomination in Minnesota in 2017 gave $1.44 million in 1 year. You see, and all of what they give goes to equipping our missionaries so they can have sound systems. They buy the sound systems. They buy the projectors. They buy speakers. They buy vehicles. They buy all those things. Our students here at our church gave incredibly last year. A few years ago, not too long ago, they were giving maybe $3,000 a year. Then 2 years ago, they gave just over $8,000. We were blown away. Like, wow, our students here in our youth group gave over $8,000. Then they sat down and challenged themselves, and their goal for 2017 was $17,000. I was like, you know, you're kind of fighting that, like, I want to be your cheerleader and encourage you, but at the same time, yeah, it's not happening. Like, you're going to fall flat on your face. And so I'm sitting there thinking this. We just came back from our time where we got to see what we gave. I sat down and opened it up, and our students, this last year, the giving that came in through Speed the Light this last year, $17,604.11. And can I tell you, I've never been so challenged in my life. What am I doing? That's amazing. But watching these younger students challenge me, what am I doing? I love the analogy that Pastor Steph keeps using of a ripple effect. And when we think of a ripple effect, so often we picture, if you've gone down to the lake walk and you're throwing rocks out there, you picture the rock hitting the water and all these ripples going out. And that's what they're talking about, someone who gets saved and all the ripple effect of the people that get saved because of them. But when we stop and think about that analogy, we need to remember we have a missions committee that has prayerfully selected the right stones to be going out into that water. Every missionary that we have, we've been praying for. Then we need to remember that rock can never even get into the water if there isn't an arm to throw it. Church, we are that arm. We are that arm. We have 28 missionaries that are following the call of God on their life. And our call may not be to go to some college campus or some country. Our call is to support those that are answering that call.